I'm going to talk to you about EV, how EV works for all, and I realized I had a whole bunch of wonderful things to show you about my journey as an EV driver. I've been driving it for about 7.5 years. This is actually a video. Maybe I'll send it to Lisa, but this is me driving to Seaside in my Chevy Bolt in the dead of winter to go surfing. So the Bolts can make it. They can drive in the snow, and it's not a misnomer. So you can drive in the snow, you can get to the coast. If you're a surfer, you can drive, you can surf in the wintertime, so you're not stuck at home. So why are EVs the future? Very simply put, there's a ton of focus, energy, investment, and I'd say a lot of excitement about getting to a goal, or at least a sense, at least the firm that I work for, D&B, feels that based on analysis that 50% of all light-duty vehicles, so the light-duty vehicles you see driving around on the streets, all the new ones will be electric by 2030, 50%. That's a pretty rapid rise in a deployment of a technology that we know is proven, but it also is changing the landscape about people's mobility and the psychology of it, because the reality is right now, you can drive around and fill up your car at any station all over the place. There's a comfort to it, there's a relaxation to it, and now moving to a technology where you don't have that access all the time, there's a fear to it, and that's okay. Because again, nothing we have is going to be a perfect science, it's going to be a perfect fix for all of our problems, but it is substantially better. And the idea of being able to put all these vehicles on the road is phenomenal, but it's going to take a ton of education, because it's not going to be the people who make over $100,000 a year. We're not going to fix the climate crisis. We need everyone working on it. So we need people of all socio-demographic backgrounds, also all economic backgrounds to be a part of this, and everyone feel good that this is a good decision for their home or their business. So some of the big market directives right now, again, I work for a global energy consulting firm. My role is to help accelerate our EV work across all of North America, so I'm kind of keeping my eyes on all 50 states as well as Canada. So as much as that's my viewpoint sometimes, but I like bringing it back to the local level and how it applies to you all and why EVs are working for everyone. So I think one of the biggest things we need to understand is that there's a massive amount of EV infrastructure that's being deployed both privately and publicly. That's fantastic. We need that. Having chargers at home isn't going to solve the problem. We need it all over the place, but also in suitable locations that make sense for people. And they also have to get the power when they need the power. It has to be affordable, and they need to get on their way. Because a lot of times we don't want people sitting in a fast charger for 2 hours when they were told it was only supposed to be 30 minutes. That does happen. It's not a perfect science just yet, but we didn't want to let you know. So supply chain issues, again, we see that a lot. Like, can we get the vehicles delivered? Can the EV infrastructure get delivered? There's a difference between level 2 chargers, the one that you can put in your home, that's 240 volts, 120 charger, those little plugs that you can just plug into a 3-prong outlet, and then the direct current fast chargers, which basically you see in public places, which can charge your car super fast. There are challenges right now with that in terms of being able to get the supply, but also the impact and the impact that it has on the grid. When you drop one of those in there, you need your utility to be able to organize and set up the right infrastructure to make sure you can get the power there. I mentioned one of the most exciting inflection points that hopefully you saw from the State Department of Energy is that there are now 70,000 EVs on the road in Oregon. That's the second most behind California. Oregon's got a goal of, I think, 250,000 EVs by 2025. So we got about a year and a half-ish to get another, 180,000 EVs on the road. So that's a pretty phenomenal opportunity for all of us to be able to do that. But again, it can't just be the people with means that are getting in the cars. Like, we need folks from all walks of life feeling comfortable that they can use this vehicle, they can charge, and they can feel like it's not just for the people who have means. It's an accessible resource for everyone. We just need to work on the education there. Another really exciting point is there's a ton of electrification around fleets, especially in schools, transit agencies, but then also private fleet operators. They are looking at buying vehicles, getting infrastructure set up so they can send their trucks out, do the deliveries, help our economy work. And that's a really exciting place, because in the medium and heavy duty space, that's where all the nasty emissions come from. It's not necessarily coming from our light duty vehicles, but it's the diesel vehicles. It's those big rigs that are spewing a lot of nasty stuff into our air. That's really where the major kind of impetus is happening to help improve our air pollution. Because again, where the big rigs are driving around, where they're going to ports and stuff like that, that's where a lot of the low-income disadvantaged communities are, and that's where the lowest air quality is. So it's not necessarily here in Lake Oswego, but if you get out of these areas where all the pollution is, there's a direct correlation between those two. Another exciting point, almost all the OEMs, those are the manufacturers of the vehicles, they're all committed to electric vehicles. I don't think there's a single one that isn't already, they already have an EV on their lot or they have it in the hopper to get delivered. A lot of them are moving towards having an all-electric fleet by 2030 or 2035, so whenever you go to a dealership or you order a car, all you're going to have is an EV, which is fantastic. And then I would like to say there's a lot more greater marketing and awareness. I always said a couple years ago, if we get an EV commercial at the Super Bowl, we made it. Now all we see are EV commercials at the Super Bowl, so I think we're in a good start there. I do work with a ton of utilities. I know there's can be a love and hate relationship with them, but like they are instrumental in advancing transportation electrification. And without them partnering and advancing programs, we will not get it done. Because they ultimately are, I would call them the lifeblood in terms of figuring out how to calibrate the grid, how to make sure you have the right infrastructure at your home or your business, but they also are investing significant amounts of money in programs. So when you look at opportunities right now, like Portland General Electric, I just took advantage of their $500 EV rebate. Very simple, very easy. I got a hardwired charge point charger at my home right now. Simple process, easy to set up. But we need those rebates to help kind of accelerate the market. I also helped set up 3 of my friends to do so. So if you ever have a question, I've gone through I think a half dozen EV charger installs, so I'm happy to help. But the point is across the United States, there are utilities that either have launch programs or looking at new programs that help everyone. People who are at home, people who are multifamily businesses, fleet operators, school districts, transit agencies. There's a lot of support right now that we need to make sure that the EVs are for all of us. And that's the point. It can't just be single family residences leading the charge to make sure that EVs are there. We need to work with people who rent. We need to work with people who live in multifamily apartment complexes, people who are on really fixed income, as well as people who are using vehicles to move their business about. Like that's really the exciting pace. And I know there's a Ford Transit out there that I think it gets about 112 miles. And the best story I heard today is guess who's buying those? Plumbers and electricians. The small mom and pop shops. Like that's fantastic to know that those hardworking folks who have a business to run are investing in this type of technology because they know it's a good thing for their business, but it's also a good thing for the planet. So that's a great sign to be able to see that the technology's there, it's meeting the people who are keeping our homes and our lives working. This is another exciting thing that you may not be aware about, but in terms of like the connection between what the utilities are doing, what the states are doing, and now what the federal government's doing. They have 4 phenomenal programs right now to help accelerate EV infrastructure and also school bus electrification. So the first 2 are all strictly about public infrastructure. So right now the Oregon Department of Transportation is working with the Federal Highway Authority to get DC fast charger hubs all throughout the state of Oregon. Now they have a kind of what you would call a requirement that they're at least 150 kilowatts. So what that means is you can get a lot of power very fast. But they have to be across alternative fuel corridors. But the great thing about that is that's funding that's going to be coming over the next 5 years. So when we're driving across the great state of Oregon, there's going to be fast chargers coming that's going to be publicly available 24/7.
Okay,
So,
can I ask a question?
yeah.
I know, like I have a Leaf, my
Yeah.
husband has a Tesla,
Yeah.
there's a lot of different cars, and it's very much in transition right now. With federal programs, what makes, how are they handling the variety? The deal is with each car has a different kind of nozzle. And so there's different kinds of nozzles, and that's been a little bit complicated for charging.
That is tricky. So right now, the standard for the NEVI program is the CCS. That's probably the most predominant one outside of Tesla. So that's on pretty much everything except for Chatamo is the other port. That was on the Nissan Leaf, but that's going to get shuttered and thrown away because it's not going to. It's going to be CCS and the NACS one, NACS, which is from Tesla. So those are the two charging ports.
I see.
Yeah.
And I can use the Tesla one.
You need to be able to, you have to get an adapter, and right now, certain Teslas, I know on the East Coast, there's actually some chargers that have been opened up for non-Tesla users.
Okay.
Yeah. The other one that I would actually encourage the city of Lake Oswego to go after right now is there's a community and corridor grant where you actually know this whole region could go after that. There's $2.5 billion that's set aside. No state can get more than 10% of that. But you can go apply and get funding to put EV infrastructure in your community. Like it's readily available right now. And so between those two, there's $7.5 billion that's being invested in public infrastructure across the United States right now. So that's very exciting. That's going to open up access, provide more publicly available infrastructure for people. So again, it's not only about you being able to charge at home, but you're going to have that access outside of home. School bus, again, I'm a big fan of school buses. I actually helped create the first school bus electrification program in California. We worked with a local air district that funded 12 electric school buses at no cost. We funded it, and then the air district did set up charging infrastructure. That's a really great thing for us to do, especially in terms of the diesel and the propane emissions that come. The kids are sitting in the bus. There's no reason why not to, with all the different avenues we have right now to help electrify and make it more affordable for the school district, because they end up winning if they go electric as opposed to continuing with combustible fuels. So pros and cons of EVs. This is actually kind of very simplified, but like the work that we've done and I've done between looking at businesses and people, it's pretty straightforward. Like, why drive an EV? Acceleration, easy to maintain, lower cost, lower environmental footprint. But I'd say the most exciting thing that's coming down the pipeline is what we call vehicle to everything, or V2X, or vehicle to grid. Your car is going to be a power plant one day. When you think about that, right now, if you're driving an internal combustion engine vehicle, all it does is consume stuff and burn stuff. It doesn't do anything for you except for get you from A to B and cost you a lot of money. Whereas an electric vehicle now, once we get the tariff set up, once we get some of the charging infrastructure set up, the battery gets set up in a way where you can send energy and receive energy, this becomes a power plant for you at your home or in public. Like, this is the revolution that's happening that I think is the most exciting piece. If your house goes down, there's going to be that potential one day to be able to use the battery in your vehicle to power your house if the grid goes down. Again, a lot of things have to happen for that, but that's the potential that you will never get with an internal combustion engine vehicle. Yes?
When do you see it beginning to mature so that it can be available?
So California has got it right now. There are a bunch of vehicle-to-grid pilots that are happening in PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric's service territory. Right now, Portland General Electric has, basically load shifting type programs where basically you charge at different times a day, but I could probably see in the next few years they'll be having pilots coming out. Pacific Power is starting to evaluate it out as well. So I would say in the next 5 to 7 years, there's going to be a big push in terms of kind of integrating EVs in a way where the utility can actually benefit from it as well as the customer. Yeah.
But don't we have to have, doesn't the vehicle itself have to be modified so that it would send electricity
No, that
back?
can all be done by the charger.
Really?
Yep.
Fabulous.
Yeah, go for it.
You talk about lower income, you talk about different socioeconomic scales of being able to have an electric car. When Tesla came out in the early 2000s, they had a thing called battery swap, where they could literally swap the battery. But that wasn't popular because everybody buying Teslas had their own single-family house with a garage, and they wake up every morning with a full battery.
Yeah.
But with vehicles that need to be running all the time, and people that don't have houses, in China they've swapped 29 million batteries so far. You pull in, you swap the battery, and you drive out in 3 to 5 minutes. Why isn't the US adopting that?
I don't know. I'm not going to pretend like I know why we haven't moved in that direction. So it's a great point.
People that live in cities that can't afford garages and they can't drive to a charger
Yeah.
would literally drive to a battery swap. They would replace gas stations.
Yeah.
Swap. Plus, you maintain the inventory of batteries.
Yeah.
So they're not just parked behind a barn somewhere that someone's abandoned. All the batteries are sourced. And to me, it's just, when people are going to be sitting in line waiting to get a charger, and across the street there's a battery swap, and people are going to be driving in and out in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why in America we don't adopt that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Again, what holds people back? Again, the upfront cost, the range, the access to charging, and I think in my mind, the most important one is fear of change and unknown. It's like I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who said, I would love to get an EV, but I just can't. I don't. It's different. I'm very comfortable in my lifestyle right now. I don't want to have to be asked to charge my car a little extra time, like whatever runs out, so that the excuses start mounting because it's a change. It's a fundamental change. But I think that's an exciting thing of it because it gives you an opportunity to kind of think bigger about your life than just the convenience of being able to go plug into a gas station and fill it up, and all the upstream and downstream impacts of the petroleum industry. So I just wanted to kind of leave on like an equitable transition because that is a very important thing in our work, but also think in everyone's work is that we need all of us to kind of join this bandwagon as opposed to just the folks with means. Again, making sure we have more affordable price points, incentives, expanded programs, and greater education. And that's just my goal at the fast charger at Walmart. And I think I would also like to say I'm probably one of the few EV drivers that has 3 car seats in the back of my car. So if you have a big family, you can still drive a small EV. So I will end on that because Rosie the Riveter is a very inspirational figure. So we can do it, you can do it. I think I got through this pretty quickly. So how many people drive an EV right now in this room? 1, 2, 3. That's
We have a
awesome.
plug-in hybrid.
Okay, close.
But right now it's running electric.
Okay, awesome.
Running electric.
Wonderful. So any questions for me? Go for it.
I'm curious about, I've heard, another opposition is the battery. Like people will say who are kind of opposed to EVs is that the battery, getting the minerals, recycling, what kind of discussion is happening around what to do with batteries and making them more recyclable?
Yeah, and I think I mentioned one of the federal programs right now is about battery recycling and figuring out second useful life.
Yeah.
What we found is what's I think interesting is in the school bus batteries situation is a lot of the investors that we work with will actually look at second useful life of the batteries after they lease the electric school buses to a school district, and then say in 5 or 7 years when they have to be turned over, they're actually taking those batteries and then actually looking to sell them off as little power plants or potentially used in other countries that need those access to those batteries. So there is a lot more of a discussion on the second life applicability of it. I do have to say though, I've actually gotten a lot of questions about the rare earth elements, the sourcing of it, and there's a lot of people who are saying that, EVs are dirty and nasty, and is it a perfect thing to put together? Absolutely not. Are there emissions that come from sourcing the batteries and putting it together? Absolutely. But unequivocally, there's no science or data that shows that driving an internal combustion engine is cleaner than an EV. It's impossible. When you talk about us being a net importer of petroleum, we get 40% of our oil from Canada, the other 10% from Saudi Arabia. When you look at all of the emissions that come from shipping that stuff and then driving around the United States, it doesn't even pale into comparison. It just does not. And I think we need to put that debate to rest because a lot of people, I get sent stuff like, hey, so you're driving this dirty EV, and then I have to go through this long-winded explanation about upstream emissions and whatnot. But the point is like, we have a tremendous opportunity to break us away from this obsession on oil and actually like get us independence. Because you think about it, like electricity is domestically produced. We're never going to have to source it out of the country. Like that's amazing to know that the cars can be an accelerator for energy independence as opposed to internal combustion engines still keep us relying on outside countries for fuel. So, what else? Or are we done?
One or two.
Okay. Well, let's go for you, sir.
Yeah, are plug-in hybrids considered EVs?
Yeah.
And what do you think the future of plug-in hybrids is?
Very small. Right now, I think in new vehicle sales, like I think we hit 10% of new vehicle sales in the U.S. of battery electric, and I don't think plug-in electric got close to that. They're a complementary element, so for folks who don't want to make the transition or make the switch, it's there. But there's not going to be like battery electric vehicles all of a sudden get overpassed by plug-in hybrids. Like they're just going to be a complementary element, like hydrogen fuel cells or, you know, to a certain extent, natural gas vehicles. But that's another conversation. Okay. Anything else? We'll go get one. They're fun. You'll never go back.